Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, in his outs, in betweeners. It's me again. Welcome back to another PAP Reports. The bad bits. It is Wednesday, August the 26th, 2020. A private school paedophile housemaster who was jailed in 2019 for 19 years has had another 3.5 years added to his sentence to run concurrently. Paul Stevens worked at the £21,000 a year Aberley Hall boarding school in Worcestershire until 1999, when he left after suspicions were raised about his behaviour towards pupils. However, even though numerous allegations had been made against him at the time, the boarding school, which taught a string of Tory MPs, helped him find work abroad by giving him a glowing professional reference, which ultimately allowed him to get a job in Kenya, where he went on to commit offences of voyeurism in 2012. Recently, more allegations of his abuse had emerged, for which he was recently sentenced to the additional 3.5 years after he pleaded guilty at Warwick Crown Court. Judge Andrew Lockhart QC expressed concern Stevens was given a reference by the school and said the whole file needed reviewing by authorities. He said he was given a reference to go to Kenya. I have said the whole file needs to be reviewed by the authorities in Worcester. It needs to be ensured that such things never happen again. The court was told how Stevens would follow a boy into the showers at the school in Kenya and would watch him undress. He has also admitted indecently assaulting another 8-year-old boy at Aberley Hall during the 90s. Sentencing, the judge added, in November 2019, you pleaded guilty to 15 sexual offences against 3 boys while they were pupils under your care at Aberley Hall. The sentence I passed on you was a long one, 19 years, extended to 24, because I found you to be dangerous. But that was not the extent of your offending as illustrated by these offences today. You denied these matters even after you had been convicted of the earlier matters. Most disturbingly, you left Aberley Hall in 1999 because suspicion had been raised against your name, but the school chose to give you a reference and you went to the school in Kenya. At his original trial, the court heard how his actions were ignored by the head teacher of Aberley Hall boarding school during the 1980s and how concerns had been raised at the time about Stevens' behaviour towards the boys, but nothing was done by then head teacher Michael Haggard. Stephen of Gwynedd in Wales pleaded guilty to 10 charges of indecent assault and 5 of indecency with a child before 2 more victims then came forward. Detective Inspector of West Mercia Police Mark Walters said previously Paul Stevens held a position of trust as a teacher, a position he abused in the worst possible way by preying on vulnerable children. I would like to pay tribute to the victims who came forward and gave evidence against him. Thanks to their bravery, he has now been convicted of his appalling crimes and will face justice for his actions, and hopefully this will now give them some sense of closure. A former British Army corporal has been jailed for 32 months after being caught out by an online paedophile hunting group. 78-year-old James Clark thought he'd been messaging a boy named Carl, but was snared by paedophile hunters who turned up at his home in Derby to challenge him over his sexualised messages. Clark, who had been committing sex offences since the early 70s, had already served 2 prison sentences since he left the army and has 18 convictions for 44 offences dating back to 1973. 8 of those 18 convictions were for sexual offences. Lucky Tandy, prosecuting, said the defendant had been sending sexualised messages to Carl and gave him his address saying they should meet. He went as far as telling Carl that he should not tell anyone what they were doing. The group attended at the address and attempted to ask him about the messages before calling the police. Miss Tandy said after being arrested and answering no comment to the questions he was asked by detectives, Clark was released under investigation. But on 3 occasions between then and June of this year, he was caught with either mobile phones or tablets that he had failed to declare to the police, breaking the terms of his order. On one of them, when he was living in Railway Terrace in Derby, a support worker caught him frantically trying to hide a box under an armchair which contained a phone. Clark of Utter Oxeter Road, Mickleover, was handed an old sexual offences prevention order when he was jailed for 3 years for possession of indecent images in 2008. He was then jailed again for having 2,500 more indecent images in 2013 and was handed an updated sexual harm prevention order. Are there any judges watching this who can now see that sexual harm prevention and suspended sentences don't fucking work? Every one of these utter sick cunts needs locking up for the maximum sentence or hanging from a fucking lamppost. Recorder Martin Butterworth said the most serious offence is seeking to be in the company of a 14-year-old boy who you were grooming. You tried to arrange a meeting with what you thought was a naive 14-year-old with the intention of having sexual contact with you. The fact is that you are now an old man who, when you are at liberty, find yourself isolated. Your family has disowned you, and over the years you have found yourself friendless. You don't deserve any fucking less, you fucking scumbag. It continued, but you are a 78-year-old man who has a bad record for sex offending and breaching orders. Personally, I'd stick this filthy fucker in for the remainder of his pitiful existence, not just 32 fucking months, in the hope that while he's in prison, that existence is made as painful as possible. You may remember in recent weeks we spoke about an unnamed Conservative MP who faced allegations over 4 separate incidents of rape and sexual assault. Well, the alleged victim wants politicians to name him when they return from their summer recess next week for the safety of vulnerable constituents. The ex-Commons researcher in her 20s says that she needed hospital treatment after an alleged attack. The Tory party has refused to suspend the MP, who is currently on bail while police investigate. She said she wants them to use a special legal immunity known as parliamentary privilege, which allows members of the House of Commons and House of Lords to speak freely during proceedings without fear of legal action, which is what Lord Peter Hain used in 2018 to name Topshop boss for Sir Philip Green as a leading businessman accused of bullying and sexual harassment. The alleged victim's friend said that she's only going down this route because of the lack of action by the Conservative Party. She added, he should not, under any circumstances, be allowed to meet constituents, and in any other workplace he would have been suspended. He's been arrested for a serious violent offence. It's important his name so every constituent can take relevant precautions. It's a public safety issue. Now, although I do agree that naming someone for a crime they're not yet proved to be guilty of could be detrimental, these are allegations only at this stage, and people need to understand that without proof, allegations are unfounded, and so although it's a serious offence, safeguarding measures must be put in place while the investigation is ongoing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean naming the MP. The Conservatives could simply suspend him while the investigation is ongoing, meaning that he would not be dealing with his constituents, meaning that they would not be placed at any potential risk. To be fair, I'm not sure why he hasn't been suspended pending investigation. I'm sure anyone else who's not a government puppet would have either been suspended or sacked over such allegations. And it should be no different for the government monkeys. Very big thank you to every single one of the channel supporters, especially our channel Patreon supporters. Your support really is appreciated and truly helps. And that's it for today's Too Much for YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and if you haven't already subscribed, let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, and of course other officials. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.